Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane with Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, and Austin Price. Big thanks, as always, to our friends and presenting sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions, for making the show possible. You can pick up the phone, get a free estimate by dialing 865-524-5888, or you can go online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. They are local and trusted since 1999. If you need roofing, siding, windows, repairs, whatever the case may be, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. Got a lot going on this week. Of course, SEC Media Days. Tennessee's going to take to the podium later today here on a Tuesday. Day one's already in the books, and got 3 more days to go as well. Fall camp is just a couple weeks away. Recruiting never stops. But first, let's hit on just briefly the Major League Baseball draft. Brent Hubbs, it was a really good night for Tennessee on Sunday night. Led through the first 2 rounds, led all programs with 4 draft picks. Had the highest draft pick since Nick Senzel went 2nd overall in 2016, with Christian Moore going 8th overall. Blake Burke snuck in the first round. Billy Amick and Dylan Dryland were selected later on. It was a really good night for Tennessee overall on Sunday, and a really good night overall for the Major League Baseball draft to date.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you knew this was a talented team, and it was a good team, Austin Price. But, you got your head coach sitting on the podium all night long for coverage, talking about his program and marketing and selling Tennessee, and then Tennessee gets their name called 4 times on Sunday night. That's kind of how you draw it up. If you're a head coach, there's no better exposure for you than what Tennessee got. If you're a baseball fan, or if you're a baseball prospect following the draft, weren't you paying attention to what Tennessee was doing?
Yeah, 100%. And again, having Tony up there, breaking it all down. Obviously he's pretty good at that. It's not his first time doing it. And, Christian Moore, to me, I was glad to see him continue to rise, go in the top 10. He was spectacular all year. Blake Burke transformed his game as a hitter. Obviously, Dryling was fantastic down the stretch. As I thought he and Tears were kind of this year's version of Jared Dickey, just, really good for contact, always put the ball in play, struck out very few times, especially Dryling. And then of course, Billy Amick. We all talk about Amick, 23 home runs. If he doesn't miss 2.5 weeks and Christian Moore doesn't have the season he has, which was just gross, then Billy Amick probably is Tennessee's single-season home run leader. He had 23, was 1 off the record, and missed 2.5 weeks with the appendectomy. So just a really good, representation that first night. Obviously, it carried over into Monday. And, you look at, where this program is, it just continues to get better and better. And I laughed when Eric started breaking it down, and he said Nick Senzel, because he said, since Nick Senzel, and the Nick Sen. I thought he was getting ready to say it the first time since the Nixon administration. Then I got jiggled. I was like, Kane's getting ready to drive history on us.
Well, and Rob, it's about marketing, and you got so much marketing exposure, whether it was you were watching it. And I look, it's not like people are watching it like they watch the NFL draft. I get that. But there's clips all over social media of the national champion head baseball coach breaking down things and, celebrating Christian Moore getting drafted. You can't – nobody got that. Nobody else in college baseball got that this weekend. And for Tennessee, you can't get enough of that stuff.
No, and we've talked about it before, the brand exposure and whatnot. And you're right, it's not the NFL draft, but if you're a person, a fan that cares about college baseball, that consumes, that content, Tennessee's been, shoved down your throat for 3 months. Literally. And I mean that in a good way.
Right.
You can't, the exposure is just unprecedented for, part of it's because of Tony, part of it's because, the swagger the team plays with. But at the end of the day, the biggest reason is, they just win, and they win, kind of in a flashy manner.
Eric, I think that we need to try to maybe invoke a rule that Tony puts on a shirt and tie and a jacket for every post-game interview, because Tony on the set of the Major League Baseball draft, like, everything's concise, he's all dialed in, and then he gets into a post-game. He's got a million things on his mind right after a game that, they may have run ruled somebody, and he's all over the map about something. I'm not talking about the one press conference that he had where he had the 7-minute dissertation on everything. I'm just talking about in general. He's terrific in that setting on the set of the Major League Baseball draft. I mean, really just a great representative of Tennessee, and obviously a guy who knows college baseball in and out. You can tell he just eats, breathes, sleeps, lives it, and he knows everybody, not just his conference. He knows about everybody around the country. I thought he was terrific in his coverage. I thought compared to what a Tony Vitello post-game press conference is to that is night and day.
I thought it was terrific, Eric, just breaking down team guys that weren't Tennessee guys. I mean, it's fantastic breaking down guys, especially in the league.
Yeah, I really enjoyed when he said, when we were preparing for this guy, when we were scouting this guy, and even the guys Tennessee didn't play, he had a note card there full of information, and he would do his research. I mean, he's a student of the game, and that's evident. And of course, if you know Tony and you listen to him talk just in general, that's evident. But typically in those post-game press conferences, whatever he's thinking is what you're getting. He had an earpiece in. He had a producer in his ear. He was concise. He only talked over a couple of guys a couple of times. I thought he was really good. And I was sitting there thinking last night, too. I know he did this, I believe, in 2022. But it's like when they're looking for that draft analyst, kind of what are they looking for? And Tony Vitello fits that T. He's knowledgeable. He's young. He's what the recruits and the signees and baseball fans in college know who he is. They like him. Obviously, he's going to have a good showing for his players at the draft, which was evident on Sunday night. So, I thought he did an awesome job. And, Sunday was the first time in the modern era Tennessee's had back-to-back top 10 picks. Again, Tennessee led the way Sunday night with 4 draft picks overall, while LSU and Wake Forest had 3. And, of course, more names, were called yesterday, and more names will be called even today as Tennessee baseball continues on with the 2024 Major League Baseball draft. Let's shift gears here. Let's go to Dallas, 2024 SEC Media Days. Ongoing right now, again, started yesterday. Greg Sankey kicked things off, had a couple of teams. Of course, today, Tennessee's going to be up there. Rob Lewis, what are some storylines coming into this week? You can start with Tennessee, and then we can work our way out. What are some specific Tennessee storylines that are going to be hammered at the podium today? They're going to be asked to the players in attendance, and Keenan Peely and Amari Thomas and Cooper Mays. What are some Tennessee storylines that are going to be discussed ad nauseum today with the Vols at the podium?
I mean, maybe it's just me, but I think the biggest Tennessee storyline is Nico. I mean, the guy that's not there. I mean, just with all the hype around him, I mean, you got a little preview of the bowl game. I just, to me, Nico's the story. I mean, segue it into, him, the guy, the number 1 overall prospect in the country 2 years ago, all the NIL chatter, and now it's his team. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on. And again, maybe that's just me, but to me, Nico is the biggest story about Tennessee football right now.
I would agree. I think Nico is obviously the biggest story. He's not there, so maybe people and fans are going to be like, why Nico here and all that? But also, this has been years and years of anticipation, right? I mean, this has been since 2021 when he made his first unofficial visit to campus, and then obviously being recruited and courted and all that type of stuff, committing in March of 2023 or 2022, or whatever that case was. And I'm getting my dates mixed up, but it's been years and years and years of anticipation, and finally Nico is the guy. So I do think that's going to obviously be the biggest storyline, for Tennessee fans, but really college football fans, because all college football fans have heard the name Nico and tried to pronounce his last name for years on years on years now.
You're so right. You're right. I mean, to me, it's both he and James Pierce. Tennessee's 2 biggest names are not in Dallas, which goes to kind of the veteran group around those 2 young kids. Pierce will be a junior, Nico will be a sophomore or redshirt freshman. There's a lot of old heads around them, and I think that's kind of the way that Tennessee elected to go with some older players. A year from now, I would say, James Pierce won't be here, but I'd say Nico would be in Atlanta for SEC Football Media Days 2025. And, I don't think, that's such an environment where you just get peppered with questions. I would say Tennessee just didn't want Nico fielding NIL question over and over and over again, because that's what the guys do from other outlets that cover other teams. And so, just let us go out here and let him go play this year. If he plays like everybody hopes he plays, then I would be stunned if he's not one of the main guys for the 2025 SEC Media Days. And, again, storylines. I think it's great that Tennessee's kind of flying under the radar. Let Texas get all the love. Georgia's obviously the class of the conference. Alabama looks like they're going, nowhere. Their demise was greatly exaggerated by a lot. And, Ole Miss and Missouri are, the easy schedule flavors of the week with chances to make the CFP in year one. So Tennessee kind of flies under the radar, and I think Josh Heupel loves that.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking more big picture, I mean, a couple of things from the commissioner. He was asked about expansion and asked specifically about the ACC, which appears to be falling apart, kind of crumbling around itself. And said he's not a recruiter, but Rob, he didn't exactly slam the door. Now, he said the league's not going to get into litigation, meaning they're not going to help pay for somebody to get out of the ACC, but didn't slam the door on what might or might not become of a collapsed ACC in terms of where some schools might land. And then, kind of talked, I thought, a little bit in circles about kind of the future. I mean, he said he was optimistic about the future of the sport, but then he talked about how they were trying to cram a decade's worth of fixing into basically 6 months or something to that effect. And so I thought he danced around a lot of the hard questions about the future of college football, but I did think his expansion answer was not surprising that they would be monitoring, but he didn't say we're expanding, but he certainly didn't slam the door on expanding either, Rob.
I mean, don't we all think that's
inevitable, right?
Yes. I mean, it's still, the landscape has changed dramatically, but I still don't think all the, the dominoes have fallen yet for, the Big Ten or the ACC or whatever, the Big 12 is going to end up looking like. So I think it's just a matter of time, don't you? I don't know if it's 18 or 20 this SEC is definitely not done growing, I don't think, nor is the Big Ten for that matter.
Well, then the question becomes, Eric, do they grow into a super deal? I mean, there's all this talk about private equity trying to buy up and create a super conference. I mean, the one thing that, all the commissioners can stand at the podiums and can talk and this, that, and the other, but if they're going to get fixed at the power, whatever we're at now, 3, 4, 2, whatever we're going to end up with, somebody's got to be in charge of it. And until somebody's in charge of it, I think you got a lot of people saying a lot of stuff, and you just don't know if it's got a chance to go anywhere. So what is, I'll be interested to take Sankey's remarks from this one and see what it says this time next year, if there's any movement in any direction, good or bad, in terms of where we're heading in college football. Because I think it's continued to be unsettled waters. The game itself is at an all-time high. The entertainment value of the game itself is at an all-time high. The infrastructure for the game is arguably at an all-time low in terms of who's in charge and who's got power and who's regulating and all those types of things. So where does that go? The commissioner didn't seem to have a whole lot of answers to any of that when he addressed the media for 45 minutes or so to kick things off.
I mean, his message was clear. He continued to say 16, 16, 16. I mean, he was saying 16 repeatedly on Monday morning. And, and here we are already continuing to talk about expansion. And this is the first SEC Media Days. 3 years in the making, by the way. It was 3 years ago when the story broke that Texas and Oklahoma were going to come to the SEC. That was at SEC Media Days. The last time it was in Hoover, Alabama, mind you. I believe the last time it was in Hoover. Anyway, but everybody keeps talking about it eventually turning into a super conference, two super conferences with the Big Ten and with the SEC, the ACC dissolving, and the Big 12 with all the work that it's done the past couple of years dissolving as well. But when will that happen? Will that happen? And like you said, who's going to lead that? I think the obvious answer would be Greg Sankey. But at this point in time, you're just nothing is trending in that direction in terms of getting it done in the very, very near future. But his comments could be changed and altered this time next year as well. I do think that Tennessee, going back to Tennessee a little bit, Austin, it's going to be just later today, it's going to be just so annoying. Oklahoma, Tennessee, Stoops, Heupel. That's going to be over under the third question at the podium for Josh Heupel. The big podium is going to be about Oklahoma. I say under, at least, because we are going to hit with that storyline at nauseum later today, as is expected, and as will continue to go until these two teams play.
Yeah, the only and I get the storyline. The difference is Bob Stoops isn't coaching. right? I mean, it'd be different if Bob Stoops was still coaching Oklahoma.
But
so
he's still lurking around.
He's still lurking. You're 100%. He's still, a driving force at Oklahoma. He's just not the head coach anymore. So, I mean, I would expect that, Josh Heupel to have a pre-prepared kind of response to whatever's asked him about Oklahoma. Look, is he going to enjoy the moment to go back and see some old people? The way Peyton comes in town, and he sees Hawk and Frage and Max. Absolutely. There are plenty of people there that he still knows, that he has fondness for. He'll roll in there and be excited to see them. And, it's good to see Coach Stoops pushing the Oklahoma fans to give him a warm welcome. I think they would have done that anyways. I mean, let's face it, they've won one national title.
Why wouldn't they?
I think the Oklahoma fans are pushing for Stoops to give Heupel a warm welcome is what I think is going to happen there. It has nothing to do with the Oklahoma fans.
I mean, he fired him instead of his brother.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so, I mean, again, I think that this is going to be one of those things where Josh just kind of puts his head down and look at that, much thinner Josh Heupel right there.
Are those frosted tips?
I think they were. Wow. We need to send him this picture. Ask him where he got the highlights done there in Norman. Sally's. I just think he'll dismiss it all. Like, he's going to put his head down. Nobody's going to want to win that game more than Josh Heupel. Not because it's Oklahoma, but because it's the first conference game. He knows if they can win on the neutral site game at Charlotte and win on the road at Oklahoma, they're undefeated going to the month of October, going into a bye week that kind of is sandwiched between Oklahoma and Arkansas. And at that point, Nico's had a month to figure things out, to watch the game continue to slow down. You've had some of those younger players have a month to kind of fill it out, and those older players like James Pierce continue to do what they do. So I think it's as simple as that. He wants to win Oklahoma because it's the first conference game, and to get to the CFP, you've got to win your share in this conference, and it all starts in Norman.
So the question I got, Rob, is if you're Josh Heupel, do you just address it in your opening statement and get it out of the way? Just say, we welcome Oklahoma to the league. Looking forward. I know a lot of you guys have this question. Are going to ask this question, so I'll go ahead and address this. I'm aware that we play them. I'm aware that we're playing them in Norman, Oklahoma, and I'm looking forward to going out there. It should be a great game. And you just get it done and just move on. I mean, do you give any? If you're Bill Martin and you're helping him prepare that, do you just neutralize it by just talking about it out of the gate? Because it is going to, I mean, most of the media there is Oklahoma, Texas media at this event, right? They're going to be asking about that game. So do you just address it and get it over with? Kind of the elephant in the room type deal?
I mean, I think that approach makes sense, but I don't think that you'll see Tennessee's head coach do that. I don't. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of merit in what you're saying, but I don't see him taking the bull by the horns.
And if he did it, he would still be asked about it. So it's not like
he'll go up there, to me, wishing against all odds that nobody will ask him about it, which is, obviously not the case. But I'd say he will not. I'd say if you're fishing for a lot of good quotes there, good luck, guys. Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, that's about anything.
But about that specifically, I mean, I think that's going to be I think that well's going to be dry.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other storylines from the Tennessee perspective that we think might be hit on a little bit this week? James Pierce is going to be a huge topic. Nico is going to be a huge topic. I think Heupel in Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Texas coming into the league from a bigger perspective. I know there's other SEC storylines, but anything else whenever Tennessee takes the podium, Austin, do you think members of the media will try to hammer home?
I think Cooper will get asked more about Nico than he'll get asked about his game.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
I just think that so much of this is going to be about Nico, right, AP? I mean, for the players and for everything. I mean, Keenan Peely is a good story, but, I mean, how many people are looking to write, a feature story? Omari Thomas is, an old veteran, not as old as Keenan Peely, but I think those guys are going to get asked about, a lot about Nico. There'll be some NIL questions probably for them about the locker room, and all that kind of stuff is probably where some of that focus will be. Or there won't be a ton of interest in them, and there'll be more interest in other teams and other players that are there that day.
Oh, I think Tennessee rolls in there with a head coach who's not going to give you a whole lot. 3 guys that don't necessarily move the needle compared to other players in this league because they're not as flashy. So I think Tennessee kind of flies in under the radar. People are focused on others, and it's a ho-hum day. That's what I think is going to happen. If Nico or James Pierce were there, I think that this is maybe a little bit more eyeballs. I think it's like, oh, okay, there's Tennessee with some linemen and, a guy that can rent a car because he's 27. So, I think that this plays well for Tennessee. Again, I think Tennessee's always been the better program traditionally in any sport, minus baseball, where they handle the spotlight pretty well with Tony as kind of the underdog team. And I think that that's kind of where they are. Let Missouri and Ole Miss get all the flavor of having the easier schedules and returning quarterbacks and all that, and then let Texas and everybody else get all the headlines. Tennessee just kind of put their head down and get to the practice field come August.
Yeah, at SEC Media Days, you have like the main room, you have like the radio room, you have the electronic media room, you have 3 different rooms where you get interviews. And in the main room, they bring them in staggered, so they'll have like the big stage and then a bunch of like little stages around the edges. And nothing's worse than when like there's a little bit of a crossover, like, just using an example, like South Carolina comes in Spencer Rattler, and then you still have the defensive tackle from LSU over here, and there's like 55 media members that go to that one little stage. And then the defensive tackle over here from LSU is getting a one-on-one with Jimmy Himes because nobody's paying him attention. As long as there's not that big of a disparity whenever Tennessee players are up there.
You're telling me that Jimmy's interviewing a guy from LSU. And are they talking about the gumbo pick?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Tuesday, and you're exactly right. Who knows whether it's the gumbo picks all
could have used any school there. I don't know why I used LSU.
But here's the thing. Look at the Tuesday teams that are there: Georgia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Missouri. Georgia
is the less of the 3 of the 4.
Georgia's the elite team in college football right now. I think we're one of the elites, right? Oklahoma is a huge story because it's their first SEC media day, and all of their media is driven down from Norman to Dallas. And Eli Drinkowitz is a quote. He might say anything, Rob Lewis. So, I mean, it is for Tennessee let's just slide in and slide out with very little fanfare and very little discussion, which I think they'll get, and I think they'll be very happy about it all.
Somebody will ask Eli Drinkwitz about standing on business, won't they, Rob?
100%. And somebody might ask Josh about being stood on or whatever. That's I mean, with that kind of media circus, he'll get the stand on business question for sure.
If you're a national media person and you're looking at that schedule and you look at who's going to be there, Drinkowitz is the most likely to give you something for a big picture story because he just doesn't really have a filter, right, AP? I mean, Kirby Smart will dance around the answer a little bit. I don't know Brent Venables well enough to know how candid he is, but Drinkowitz might say, he might say anything. He might scold NIL. He might pull a Dave Aranda and talk about, how they're basically buying people, and he might just rip college football in general, or there's no telling what he might say. So if you're a national guy, that's the guy you want to hang around because there's where your hot take quotes are coming from if they're coming on Tuesday, which is why they'll get more exposure about stuff than Tennessee will.
Holy crap, Hubs. So I'm sitting here looking at the names. I'm like, Christian Williams. I'm like, there was a kid from Memphis that went to Oregon or Ohio State or whatever. And I looked him up. Sure enough, that's him. He's now at Missouri. That's fantastic. I had not heard about this kid in a long time.
Yes, Brent, I 100% understand what you're saying there.
Thank you.
I 100% can't understand what you're saying there. You're right. I mean, like, Drinkwitz is going to be the quotable guy. Oklahoma's got their first year, their deal, and Georgia's the class. Again, I said that Tennessee was the 4th of 4, and I think Josh Heupel is happy about that. They're sandwiched in the middle. They can kind of get in, get out. There's no like super storylines with Cooper Keenan and Omari Thomas. like they're going to provide the same amount of quotes that Josh Heupel is. And you're right. They'll be asked about Nico. I'm sure some of those guys will be asked about James Pierce. Sorry, I got sidetracked because I was like Christian Williams.
Squirrel.
Again, I think this is just how if Josh Heupel could have picked who goes on the same day as him. I think I don't know if he picks these exact teams, but he picks teams that are going to be a lot more, quote, sexy for the media than Tennessee. he slides in, slides out. He's back in Knoxville preparing for July 31st. And, everybody else is talking about, Carson Beck and Luther Burden and everybody else.
From a fan's perspective, Tennessee very well could be the most boring team this week in Dallas.
Absolutely.
And that's, from a fan's perspective, might be a little disappointing. From Josh Heupel's perspective, giddy up. That's
he
awesome.
takes pride in it.
Yeah.
I mean, he relishes the fact that he doesn't give anybody anything.
I mean, I believe Vanderbilt's taken its new quarterback, I think, and
look,
that's a storyline.
Well, the story is, Oklahoma's bringing Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
Okay, and the story for the first SEC game is Nico versus Jackson Arnold. And Jackson Arnold's going to do all the media stuff, which the Oklahoma media people will have a field day that Brent Venables took that, but Tennessee didn't bring their all-world $1 million flashy superstar to media day.
Problems in the locker room.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right, SEC Media Day is happening right now all week long in Dallas. Tennessee will be coming up to the podium later this morning. Again, SEC Media Days in Dallas. We'll have plenty of coverage over at Volquest.com. Got plenty more here on this edition of the Volquest podcast. But first, a word from our friends, our sponsors over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
Again, that phone number for Exterior Home Solutions is 865-524-5888. You can visit them online at Exterior Home Solutions as well. Local and trusted since 1999. Those summer storms, if you have a need or just want to have some upgrades to your home, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. Austin Price, Tennessee got a big-time wide receiver commit earlier this week in Travis Smith, or I guess it was on the weekend. Highly rated 4-star prospect now comes in. I believe he's the third highest rated prospect in the class. Puts Tennessee from 9th in the SEC after the reshuffling of the rankings up to 6th in the SEC. Big time commit for Tennessee over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Top 60 player by Charles Power and on 3. Just exactly what Tennessee was looking for. I mean, tall, long, runs well. I know Georgia's has pushed that he doesn't run as well down the stretch here, but he runs plenty well. And again, just a monster. I mean, he's big and long, and I think he's only going to get bigger when he gets in a weight room. I mean, and he really fills out. I think he's got a chance to be just a monster. And a super smart kid. He watched his commitment there at the high school with his family and friends in attendance. I thought he was really, really impressive. I thought him taking time to pray before he announced, I thought was really, really impressive. It's just something you don't see a 17-year-old kid do a whole lot, just, to command the room. And, again, this Kelsey Pope's been on that one for over a year, Eric, and, they really worked hard on that one. And if you go back and watch that interview I did with him coming out of his official visit, and he's just kind of looking around, he's like, man, this place, he's just taking it all in, right? I thought that was super impressive for the kid. But again, Tennessee got 3 really good receivers in this class. A big cycle for Kelsey Pope.
Yeah, and I think you can give an assist to Jalen Hyatt's production here too. I think what they did in 22 and what Hyatt did as a tall, long receiver is something that Travis Smith took note of when Tennessee started calling. He spoke multiple times about how much he really likes this offense, how much he thinks he's a really good fit in this offense, and I think that what he saw out of the offense is the reason he took Tennessee's phone call to begin with. And I think you go back to what they did in 22 with those wide receivers and the production that they had there. I think it was a real attention getter for Travis Smith to get Kelsey Pope in the door, to allow him in the door to go to build that relationship, to go recruit him. And this was a little bit of an old school recruitment. I mean, This was a little bit about. It was all about relationships. I'm not saying there wasn't an NIL factor there, but this one didn't have the NIL vibe that some other recruitments have out there. This was a bit more about comfort, style, relationships, and those types of things. And, he found a fit that he liked in Tennessee, and it certainly centers around Kelsey Pope.
And for the people that they love to follow recruiting, and they because On3 is such an open network, you can go read the Alabama side or the Georgia side. I'm sure you've seen, Georgia's people were saying, well, he wasn't a take here. Alabama's people were saying he wasn't a take here. That's half true, half not. Had he wanted to commit to Alabama coming off his official visit, they would have absolutely taken Travis Smith. But he wanted to take his visits. And so when he took his visits, a couple other receivers came in, silently committed to Alabama, like Caleb Cunningham, and all of a sudden, the deal changed for Travis Smith with Alabama. Georgia, same thing. You don't go from telling Matt, why are you here, Matt Ray? He's going to Georgia, and then a week later, all of a sudden, he's slow. You know what I mean? Like that's where it cracks me up. So again, could have went to both those schools, but he wanted to take his visits, let it play out, and then circumstances change because those other schools end up getting more receivers, this and that, because Travis was waiting on Tennessee. Travis' last visit was Tennessee. That's where he wanted to go.
He just looks, I know you spoke on this a little bit from his weight and height and stature and all that. He just looks exactly like what a Tennessee outside receiver, what they want in an outside receiver, right? I mean, long, tall,
yes,
room to grow, fast, explosive, can go up and get those contested 50-50 balls. Is only going to get better with hand-eye, but it's already pretty good. He just looks like he's exactly kind of how they would want to draw up an outside receiver from that standpoint. Now it's about getting here and get developed. And then who's next, AP? Obviously, you said three wide receivers.
You got Christian Gass coming up on the 20th. You have Shady Hayward on the 27th. Onis Conanbani is August 15th. David Sanders is August 17th. Those are the ones that we know as of now. Jaden Perlotti doesn't know when he's going to do anything. So, I mean, it's going to happen at some point, probably before the school year starts. We don't have a firm date on it, though. And then Tennessee will continue to recruit Deson Brame. They'll continue to recruit DeJuan Morris, who's committed to USC. And then we'll see what happens with other guys. The Shakai Mills Knight, the longer that thing drags out, maybe Tennessee comes back into that one, right? We'll see what happens with those running backs. They seem like they're going to go a longer distance. But in the short term, it's Gass this Saturday, Shady next Saturday, and then we'll see what happens with Perlotti in the month of August. Or, sorry, in the month of July. And then we turn the calendar to August.
Travis Smith going to bring a friend or no?
If you were asking me if I was a betting man, I'd probably tell you that Juan Gaston goes to Georgia just because that makes sense. But Juan Gaston doesn't talk. And that's the thing I've continued to reiterate to anybody that I talk to in the recruiting world about Juan Gaston. Yeah, you think Georgia because it makes sense. 2 and 2 is 4, right? But when the kid doesn't talk, you don't know what the math equation is. So, everybody's just kind of penciling him in there based off assumptions. I do not believe Juan Gaston has told anybody anything. But again, if you said you have to choose, I would take Georgia because it does make sense. But again, when you don't talk, you can't rule anything out.
So Tennessee now to 17 commits for the class of 2025, number 6 in the SEC, number 13 in the country, and plenty more big-time targets set to come off the board here in the matter of weeks.
I mean, which is why I said on the board the other day when they were griping about rankings, let it play out. Because if you add 4-star Christian Gass, you have 4-star Shady Hayward, you had 4-star Onis Conanbani, and then if you're able to get David Sanders across the finish line, you're going to go flying up the rankings and be sitting there. Now, don't even count Perlotti, okay? Just those 4 I just talked about. That's going to send Tennessee well up into the top 10, pushing fringe top 5 with those additions. So let it play out. There's a reason they don't call the game at the end of the first quarter, right, Hubs? They play 4 quarters. Same thing in recruiting.
Well, I mean, here's this. It's about how you close. I mean, this time a year ago,
they were missing everybody.
Rolling into July, you thought that Tennessee was poised for a big month, and it just didn't happen. It never materialized. And we'll see how this thing closes out. I mean, it's about how you finish. It's not about how you start. And I think Tennessee there's a chance that this thing plays out well for them with the way they stacked their visits late in the month, because guys were willing to wait. I mean, Travis Smith's a great example. That played out really well for Tennessee because Travis Smith was committed enough to take the Tennessee visit and didn't get squeezed. He could have very easily got squeezed on the other 2 visits, and you say he never made it to Tennessee to have a chance. That was the risk. It played out well for Tennessee. It doesn't always do that, but it feels like it's playing out pretty well for Tennessee right now. We'll see how they finish out the month here.
Continual recruiting coverage. No better place for all your Tennessee nuggets about the class of 2025 than Volquest.com. Last subject I want to hit on here on this Tuesday is second-year breakout players. Teased it last week, never got to it. Not to the extent of James Pierce, who truly was a national breakout player last year with double-digit sacks and whatnot. Clearly, Tennessee will take another one of those. But who were some players who are in their second year, and you can get creative, maybe second year via the transfer portal if you wish. Who are some second-year players you think are going to step up and have a breakout year for Tennessee? I'll start, and I think the most obvious answer here, Rob, would be at the tight end position in Ethan Davis. If he stays healthy, he's going to play a ton of football. Still a learning curve there, obviously, because he played out more wide in high school, was a big receiver. But unbelievable skill set. As we talked about last week, it's more about the inline blocking stuff, but we know that he's going to play an awful lot, second year in the system, and has a chance to be pretty good if he can prove to do the physical side of the position. So Ethan Davis would be the first one that kind of jumps out to me. And looking at that position, Tennessee certainly needs him to step up because for the first time in 3 years, you have no clue what you have in that position entering the season.
Yeah, that's a good. And I assume Nico's off the table for second-year breakout player.
Nico's off the table.
Just too obvious, Captain Obvious. I think Davis is a good one for the reasons you mentioned, Eric. I mean, he's going to have to play by necessity, and has flashed all kinds of talent. I'll go on the other side. I mean, I don't know how. It's not like Tennessee's going to need him because they're so stacked in the defensive line. But David Hobbs,
I'm with you.
I mean, I don't know how much he's going to play just because they're so loaded in there. I mean, he's going to be in the rotation, but for sure. But that's a kid that, I mean, earned some time last year at a position that is tough to get, on the field as a freshman in the SEC. So I think we'll see David Hobbs do some things this year.
I got 2 guys I'm going to stay on defense with. I'm going to go Keenan Peely, which is unfair because he only played 29 snaps, so it's a second-year player. But he's played a ton of football. So I'll cheat there because I think that he's important for the defense. And then Ricky Gibson's my other one on defense. I think both those guys. I think Ricky Gibson's got a chance to be, a mainstay at corner all year long and can become a pretty good shutdown guy. So those would be my 2. AP, what's yours since you don't like the fact that I took the 26-year-old?
It's just funny, second-year players.
He is technically, right?
Make it your own. AP's going to take my second one. I guarantee it. Well, there's not many left, so.
No, I mean, I was going to say David Hobbs, and I like your Ricky Gibson pick. I'm going to go Arion Carter. Okay. Everybody's talked about T. Lander all spring and Keenan Peely. Arion Carter's just kind of flying under the radar, so I'm going to go Arion Carter there with my second year guy, but. I mean, there are a number of guys. I mean, it could be a Caleb Herring. It boils down to reps, right? Like, there's only so many. Like, how many? Pierce is going to be out there a bunch, but Rodney rotates. So, what's Josh Josephs looks like? What does Caleb Herring bring to the table? What does Jordan Ross do in year 1 as a freshman? I mean, like, all that can impact every one of those guys. So,
and the
Cam
same thing.
Seldon. Nobody said Cam Seldon.
Yeah, Cam Seldon at running back. I mean, that's a guy who needs to be a breakout guy just with some reps. And, how many receivers are they going to rotate? Where's Dante Thornton fall into this category? Eric's got power surges over there. The lights keep going off in Eric's house.
You got to give Eric a lot of credit here, guys. He said that we brought up last week. I call that long-term storytelling. Long-term storytelling
when you drag it out a week
this week. Yes.
Everybody can think about it. Everybody's ready to play.
So, I think this team's interesting because for the last 2 years, there's been that obvious guy who was oozing with talent, that it was all about their commitment to it, right? I mean, Jalen Hyatt, it was all about his commitment to the game. It was never about whether he could play. It was never about staying healthy. It was all about would he be focused in enough to do what he needed to do. I think the same for Jalen Wright a season ago, right? We wrote the story. Hey, Jalen Hyatt was one of Jalen Wright's better friends and talked about that. I don't know that there's one of those guys that you say, man, their commitment level is just totally different this offseason. Maybe there is, AP, but I don't know that there's anybody that falls into the category of what you've had the last 2 years that everybody wants the answer to, right? Everybody wants to know who's the breakout Jalen Hyatt for 24? Who's the breakout Jalen Wright for 24? Who's that player? I don't know if anybody really falls into that category right now. Do you?
Who's going to come out of left field like Theo Jackson did that first year? Was basically left for dead, and then just kind of kept playing.
And hey, maybe that's because there's they're established in who they are, right? And there's a standard in how you go about doing business, which maybe was something some of those other guys had to learn in the first couple of years with Josh Heupel, and maybe that's established now. It just doesn't feel like there's a guy who was written off for dead last year, the last couple of years on this team, that's going to show up. I mean, I think we all think Bryson Easton's going to be Bryson Easton had a really nice year last year. I mean, he's kind of established himself. Now, there's a different level for him, but it's not like he would be, quote, coming out of nowhere the way Jalen Hyatt did, or even to some degree Jalen Wright.
Yeah.
I mean, the only guy that I can think of right now that, like, based on what you hear from the coaches or what they say in press conferences or whatever, like, if he can just put it together, watch out, like one of those type of guys, kind of like a Jalen Hyatt, would be Dante Thornton, right? He's kind of in that ballpark, and I mean, I don't know if he's going to take that leap or not, but I'm just trying to think of some other examples of which that are on the roster right now that, like, have that huge breakout type ceiling if everything clicks, and Dante Thornton kind of comes to mind. Austin, is that accurate? Am I forgetting anybody?
No, I mean, we'll see on Dante Thornton.
I don't know if he'll do it. Yeah.
No, I'm going to have to see. I'm going to pull a Hubs. I got to see that one to believe that.
But I mean, based on when he was here, they're like, oh, this guy's an NFL receiver.
Do I think do I think he's going to make a few plays? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to be Jalen Hyatt?
But here's the difference, Rob. They had to have Jalen Hyatt. Like they weren't going to go offensively the way they wanted to if Jalen Hyatt didn't take a real step. Okay? I'm not saying Dante Thornton is just a straight up luxury, but we've talked ad nauseum on this podcast and everything else about how many are they going to rotate, right? What's his opportunities going to be like? I mean, there's a different level of need, it feels like, right now than there was 2 years ago with Jalen Hyatt. Like, sure. Jalen Hyatt completely changed the offense. I don't know that Tennessee needs Dante Thornton to emerge to completely change their offense, is what I'm trying to say.
That's a great point, because if Jalen didn't do what he did and sees the slot position and run with it, are you playing squirrel as a true freshman? I mean, that is you're not anywhere close to a similar boat with Dante. If he doesn't come through, I mean, you're turning to, it may not be an All-American, but I mean, you're going to, if Dante doesn't win that job, somebody who's played a lot of football in this league or at Tulane is going to win it.
That's
just a lot of things. Go ahead.
It's just different, and that's a credit to where the roster is. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing, right? I mean, you don't want to sit here and say the season or the offensive success or the defensive success hinges on some guy putting it all together or a couple of guys putting it all together. That's a credit to what you've done in roster building and roster management over the course of the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, you don't want to say it's a luxury, but you've got so many options at wide receiver. You have so many options on the defensive front. You have more options that you feel better about, maybe at linebacker, but that group's still got to step up. Secondary is a bit of an unknown, recognize that. Even on the offensive line, you're still looking for a starter, but you feel so much better about your offensive line than you did, 4 or 5 months ago. So a credit to where the roster is now, the work being put in by Josh Heupel and staff. in terms of what they inherited and what they've done over the course of the past 3 years to get it where it is today. And we'll see what it looks like in 2024. Football season's just a couple weeks away. Camp just a little over 2 weeks away from beginning. And SEC Media Days rolls on. No better place to be caught up on it all, plus recruiting, than right here at Volquest.com. $1 for 1 month. Got a special deal for YouTube viewers right now watching on JW on the website. If you look at that promo code right now, type in that promo code. For $1, you can get 2 months access to Volquest.com. $1 for 2 months by typing in this promo code right now. And an awesome time to join us over on the General's Quarters with everything going on, plus Major League Baseball draft, Tennessee Vols in that draft. And it feels like it's already getting super busy, Brent, but it's only going to get busier here in the weeks coming up.
Yeah, and we're here. It's time to go. We'll continue on with our opponent previews. Position previews are coming. As you mentioned, we've got coverage from all the players that are at SEC Media Days. I think some stuff you guys are going to enjoy that you've read today and you'll continue to read over the next couple of days. Recruiting, it's go time. And it's hard to believe, but we're knocking on the door at the end of July and the start of fall camp. And Austin Price is getting ready to send some kids back to school. And life is rolling right along. Austin Price is going to find some more top 100 golf courses over the course of the next couple of months. So life is good as this summer winds down and gets ready to start football season.
And until fall camp starts, Hubs will be in the bean patch and getting those tomatoes for Craig and Sherry.
That's exactly right. We're on our way out the door with that. It's time to go with football, baby. Time to get started.
Big thanks as always to Exterior Home Solutions for bringing us coverage of this show. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, I am Eric Kane. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Tuesday edition of the Volquest Podcast.